All right, welcome back to the deep dive. You guys know how it works. Send us something you are reading or thinking about, and we will distill it down to the juicy bits for you.
Absolutely.
And today we're taking a look at a topic a lot of you have been asking about, Picoin, and specifically looking at its price prediction after the mainnet launch.
Yeah, we've got some great analysis here looking at the mainnet launch, which happened on February 20, 25. And just to give a quick recap for anyone who's not familiar, Pi Network came out in 2019 with this really interesting concept where you could mine cryptocurrency on your phone.
Yeah.
And it was all about, creating a more inclusive and accessible digital currency.
And it definitely got a lot of buzz. So here we are, it's March 23, 2025. Picoin is officially tradable on several exchanges. You can find it on OKX, Pinex, BitGet, Gate.io, and MEXC.
Right.
It is currently trading around $1 too, and it's got a market cap of roughly $1.1 billion.
Okay, so it's real.
Yeah.
It's out there.
It's out there in the wild.
Now, for our listener who wants to know everything that they need to know without getting bogged down with all the details, our aim today is to give you a balanced perspective on Picoin's potential price trajectory. We're going to look at the short term, the long term, and also break down the key factors that could influence it going up or going down.
Okay, great. So let's dive right into it. Let's start with that short-term outlook. What can we expect over the next 3 to 6 months?
Well, the experts seem to think it might be a bit of a roller coaster ride initially, just as Picoin sort of finds its footing.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
generally the case after a big launch. You tend to see a bit of price volatility as the market kind of figures out where it's supposed to be. And one of the big drivers, particularly in this initial period, is the listings. Where does this coin get listed? Right now, Picoin is on some of the mid-tier exchanges, right?
Yeah.
Which provides some liquidity, meaning that it's relatively easy to buy and sell.
Right, so it's not going to like completely, moon just because it's on those exchanges. But as I understand it, the real thing that everyone is looking towards is getting listed on one of those top tier exchanges, a Coinbase or a Binance, for example.
Exactly. I mean, that would be the big news.
Right.
And the analysis suggests that a Binance listing, for example, could trigger a really significant price rally,
Yeah.
potentially taking Picoin up to the $1.50 to $1.80 range. But they don't think it's going to happen immediately.
Okay, what's the holdup?
Well, the experts point to Pi Network's centralized structure. And there are also some lingering regulatory questions, and those tend to make the big exchanges, a little bit hesitant.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So, I mean, it sounds like there's no big, massive spike expected immediately. But what about looking at, the actual trading itself? Like, what does technical analysis say? What are the charts telling us?
Yeah, it's interesting. Technical analysis indicates that Picoin has been trading within what's called a symmetrical triangle pattern. Now, for our listener who's not a chart wizard, this pattern often signals a consolidation phase.
Okay.
It takes a breather
Yeah.
before making a bigger move, either up or down.
Okay, so it's just kind of like the market's taking a little pause. It's figuring things out.
Right, exactly.
So what are some of the, key levels to look for here? What should we be watching out for?
Well, the analysis points out that there is an upper resistance level at $1.20. If the price can break above that, then we could see it heading towards that $1.50 target we talked about.
Okay.
On the other hand, there is a support level around $0.97. If it dips below that, then the analysis suggests we might see it testing the $1.80 level.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the RSI? Is that giving us any clues as to whether or not it is overbought or oversold?
Well, right now, the RSI is neutral.
Okay.
It's not screaming overbought or oversold,
Yeah.
which kind of plays into this whole consolidation idea.
Right. It's just kind of sitting there waiting to make a move.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a mixed bag, right? We've got these mixed signals.
Yeah.
Technical charts are hinting at a potential breakout,
Right.
but, those big exchange listings haven't happened yet.
Yeah.
What's the overall short-term sentiment, that's coming from the analysis?
Yeah.
We can see this uncertainty reflected in the sentiment on X, on social media.
Yeah.
Some people are pointing to the fact that Picoin dropped like 62% after it launched.
Wow, that's huge.
It is a big drop, and they see that as a bearish signal.
Yeah.
But other people think it's just a natural correction, and they see it as a potential, rebound opportunity.
Okay.
That $1.97 support level, that's a big one.
Yeah.
If buyers start coming in strong, then yeah, we could definitely see it testing that $1.20 and then even a $1.50 resistance.
Okay. So in the short term, it sounds like the experts are saying we could see Picoin anywhere between 80 cents and $1.50 in the next 3 to 6 months.
Exactly. That seems to be the range.
Makes sense. It's new, it's trying to figure things out. So let's shift gears a bit here. Let's look a little bit further down the road.
Right.
What about the long-term outlook? Let's say between now and 2030. What does that look like?
Yeah, bigger picture stuff. And here, the analysis emphasizes that Picoin's long-term value really comes down to whether it can actually walk the walk.
Okay.
So that means expanding its ecosystem, getting people to use it, achieving widespread adoption, and, really proving itself.
Right.
That's what's going to determine its price in the future.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. What about the next couple of years? So 2025, 2026.
Well, the analysis suggests that if Pi Network can successfully launch its open mainnet, the fully functional blockchain, and if it can build out its ecosystem of applications, we could see some pretty steady growth.
Okay.
The analyst estimates for 2026, they range from $1.50 to $5.
Okay.
And there are some more bullish scenarios that see it getting to $10, but that assumes that a lot of people are starting to use it.
Yeah, adoption is really key.
Yeah.
What could stop that from happening, though? What could, stop it from reaching those levels?
Well, those concerns around transparency, they keep coming up. And of course, any regulatory hurdles that they could face, those are the things that could temper that growth.
Right. Okay, and looking even further out to 2030, we're talking way down the road now.
Yeah.
It seems like the predictions are all over the place.
They are, because it's so far out, right?
Yeah.
By 2030, it could really come down to Picoin's utility, how useful it is in the real world,
Right.
and what the crypto market looks like in general. Conservative estimates put it somewhere between $5 and $10. But if Pi Network really manages to, become a leader in things like DeFi or mobile payments, then some of those optimistic forecasts say it could hit $50 or even more.
So, huge range. What needs to happen for those, more optimistic forecasts to come true?
Well, sustained user engagement. People need to be actively using it
Yeah.
for transactions, for apps, for all sorts of things,
Yeah.
not just holding on to it.
Right.
And we need to see some really innovative, compelling uses for it that will get people excited.
Right. Otherwise, it's just a coin.
Right.
Okay. So long term, very unclear, but could be anywhere from $5 to $50 by 2030 with a lot of ifs.
Yeah, a lot of ifs.
Okay. So let's unpack those ifs a little bit. What specific factors are the analysts looking at to figure out Picoin's price?
Well, the development team's progress, and the growth of that ecosystem,
Yeah.
if they can successfully launch and, get people to use those dApps, and if they can partner with other companies, then, yeah, the demand for Picoin could really go up.
Okay.
But on the flip side, if there are delays in development or technical problems, then that can make investors nervous.
Makes sense. And of course, there is the elephant in the room, which is regulation. How is that going to affect Picoin?
Right. Well, the analysis actually points out some specific concerns here. Pi Network's centralized structure, for one,
Mm-hmm.
and also the fact that they haven't made their source code public. That raises some eyebrows from regulators.
Yeah, for sure.
They want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Regulatory compliance, that's going to be crucial
Yeah.
if they want to get listed on those big exchanges.
Yeah.
And if they want, more widespread acceptance,
Okay.
any actions taken by regulators, anything negative, could hurt the price.
Makes sense. What about the community aspect? Pi Network has a massive user base.
It does, yeah.
Mm.
They claim over 150 million downloads and 65 million active users.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's huge. That kind of support, that can
Yeah.
drive demand.
Yeah.
But the analysis also notes that there are a lot of different opinions within the community.
Yeah, I bet.
And there are ongoing concerns about transparency.
Right.
So on X, on social media, you see predictions all over the map. Some people are super bullish. They are talking $2 to $4.
Wow.
And then there are the bears who think it's going to keep dropping.
Yeah.
And these views, they often tie back to those concerns about transparency.
So, the more unified the community can be, the better.
Yeah.
And final factor here, supply and demand. We know that the total supply of Picoin is capped.
Right. It's capped at 100 billion coins.
Okay.
But right now, only a small portion of that is actually in circulation.
Okay.
The big things to watch here are going to be the rate at which those locked coins are released.
Yeah.
And of course, the adoption rate, how many people are using it.
Yeah.
If the demand is really strong and the circulating supply is low, then yeah, the price could go up.
Yeah.
But if a bunch of coins are suddenly released and the demand isn't there, then people might start selling.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So, a lot of different factors at play. And the analysis also brings up some specific risks and challenges facing Picoin. Let's talk about those. Transparency seems to be a big one.
It is. I mean, that lack of a public roadmap, the fact that their source code isn't open for review, it creates skepticism,
Yeah.
particularly in the crypto world. People want to know what they're investing in.
Right. And I imagine that, lack of transparency could potentially hurt adoption rates.
Exactly. People are hesitant to jump into something if they don't know what's going on.
Okay. And Pi Network is not operating in a vacuum. There are other projects out there.
That's right. It's
Got competition.
lots of competition.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the established players like Bitcoin, Ethereum, but then you've got all these other newer projects, and a lot of them are also focused on that mobile-first approach.
Yeah.
So if Pi Network really wants to succeed, it has to offer something unique. It has to give people a reason to choose it over all these other options.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it risks just becoming, another coin.
Another coin.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, we can't ignore the fact that the crypto market is incredibly volatile.
Right, it is. And as a relatively new project, Picoin is definitely going to be affected by those market swings.
Yeah.
So if we see a big downturn in the crypto market in general, it's going to pull Picoin down with it,
Yeah.
regardless of how well the project itself is doing.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So it sounds like Picoin's future is kind of a mixed bag. There's a lot of potential, but there are also some serious challenges.
Exactly. I mean, the short-term outlook suggests we're probably going to see Picoin bouncing around between $0.80 and $1.50
Okay.
as things settle down.
Right.
But by 2030, it could be anywhere from $5 to $50, and that depends on whether they can overcome these hurdles.
Right. And that seems to be the takeaway here, right? If anyone is considering getting involved in Picoin, proceed with caution.
Definitely, yeah. Do your research.
Yeah.
Don't just buy into the hype.
Right. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right, exactly.
Diversify.
Stay informed about the project and, be aware of those risks that we talked about.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting project. That whole idea of mobile mining, the massive user base, it's exciting. But as the analysis makes clear, there are no guarantees here.
Yeah, none at all. It's a story in progress.
Yeah.
So just watch how things develop. See how the ecosystem grows and how they tackle those challenges.
Right. Okay. Well, that was a really thorough look at the expert analysis surrounding Picoin's price prediction. Thanks for walking us through that.
My pleasure. Happy to do it.
So for our listener out there, thinking about Pi Network's approach and its huge community, what's one unexpected real-world use that could really boost its adoption?
Yeah.
Something beyond just trading, something to think about. Thanks for sharing your sources and joining us for another deep dive.
Yeah,
If you've got any other topics you'd like us to explore, be sure to send them our way.
absolutely. We love hearing from you.
All right, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.